That's good. Survivor specialist Phil and Alexa are back. Survivor Guatemala rewatch of episodes 4 through 6 this time. We lost 4 people in 3 episodes. The exciting pre-emerge of Guatemala is coming to an end, and the post-merge, which I'll give my in-depth feelings on later, is coming to the forefront here. But Alexa, before we get started, I want to know, do you have ADD?
She thinks I have ADD, spelled AYYDEEDEE.
Is that something nice to say to someone when you first meet them, that I have ADD? I mean, is that okay?
That's usually the first thing that I say when I meet people. So I don't know. I don't think anybody was too much in the wrong there.
Oh, my God. I have no idea if Margaret actually told Judd he had ADD or not. But to me, that is one of my favorite tribal councils for over-the-topness. This is really, Judd's been going hard this entire time, but this is one of the real birth of the insanity that is Judd, because at this point he's completely lost his mind. We see so much of it over this 3-episode stretch of just Judd slowly, not even slowly, quickly just going absolutely insane from the time Brooke is voted off to the next morning when he's talking to Margaret to finally ending with him and Margaret's feud. It's one of the more ridiculous arcs. Like, it's just insane how over the top this guy is.
It's incredible. And that scene is so good. And I remember you texted me. You were like, did Margaret?
Oh, man, Alexa, I hope you cut out this entire time. That'd be fun. We were doing so well with internet, and all of a sudden, Alexa, you just cut out that whole time.
Man, I just reset my router, too. I actually stopped talking when I saw that I froze. What I was going to say is you texted me saying, did Margaret even fight back? And I think my response was, it's like screaming at a tornado. Like, nothing you can do is going to stop the mass destruction that follows. So why even try? And also, I think we talked about this on the previous recap, but this might be the only season, along with, like, maybe Gabon or I'm trying to think of some others, where a player like Margaret is not appreciated. She would be the most loved, the most popular character on so many other seasons. But because she's on the season of just all these ungrateful guys who just make a mess, it's hilarious. It's sad.
Well, and that's what I found to be so funny is that here's Margaret, like, doing her thing, saving them at the beginning. And, yeah, you cut again. I don't know what's going on with you. We can't have these problems, Alexa. We can't have this.
If I cut again, I'll move. It's just kind of a lot of stuff to move at once. So
okay. Well, you might have to. But that's what I love so much about Margaret is that at the beginning, she's the one who's saving them all, nursing them all back to health. And then at the end, by the end of it, everybody's tired of her. She's just miserable. She's just that's all anybody's saying about her is that she's miserable. She's not trying. I mean, I get it after the Brooke episode why she would be miserable. She's now stuck with Judd and Cindy. She knows she doesn't have the numbers. She told Judd exactly what was going to happen, and it's going to happen. And she has no play anymore. So, of course, she's going to be angry. I don't blame her for being angry. But this is just like, I don't know. It's just crazy to me how this all works out, how Margaret goes from being so well-liked and so well-received and saving everybody to just being stuck on a tribe with Judd. And you're not going to vote out Judd, at least in this strategy of Guatemala, because in Guatemala, the entire strategy is vote out the weakest and keep the strongest, and nobody can argue Judd is the strongest. I mean, every time he pushes a boulder, every time he does anything, he's the strongest. But in most new seasons, Judd probably goes home early because of his attitude. But in these older seasons, he gets away with it because they're so worried about strength, and they're just like, well, this guy's never going to win anyway.
I agree with everything you said. I was only listening to about half of it because I was trying to seamlessly move and not interrupt you at the same time. It wasn't seamless. Well, I tried. Good thing you were talking, so hopefully most of the attention was on you.
Hopefully. Continue.
But yeah, like you said, Judd is a tank on his tribe, both his first tribe and his second tribe. So you can't get rid of him because it's not the most athletic group in this season. And obviously, you have to take into consideration just how insane these conditions are. But on top of that, they're not super athletic. So when you have a guy like Judd, no matter how freaking annoying he is, you got to keep him.
Well, and that's what you see in these episodes. In the second one, when Blake goes home, Danny is thinking so far ahead. This is probably why she ends up winning, because of how far ahead she's thinking and how she's thinking, I can get rid of Blake and I can use Gary and Amy and Brian to move forward, even though they end up getting rid of Brian anyway. That's what she's probably thinking. She almost completely screws her game here, though, too. This is a really ballsy move that, lucky for her, worked out. But getting rid of Blake and keeping a really injured Amy and a weak Brian, this is the reason that they go to the next tribal, which, you know, like I know like this one, Brian going home, it's two people going to tribal, like it is what it is. But they weakened their tribe a lot with getting rid of Blake. And I get like they wanted to and they kind of had to because he was just so obnoxious. But you see the difference here. And this is why leading into the post-merge, the Nakum, I guess now they are Nakum, kind of takes over because they kept their strongest guy to make sure they didn't have to vote anybody else out.
Yeah. And it was one of those situations just like with like outing Gary as being that NFL player that he is. It very well could have backfired for Danny, but it didn't. It ended up working out great for her, as we know later on. So it's one of those moments where, you know, the winners, I believe that every winner deserves to win, but you also need a little bit of right timing, a little bit of luck, and she's 2 for 2 on these moments.
Yeah, and moving forward, I mean, we don't see much of Danny in these episodes. Her and Gary's first interaction is like one of my favorite things ever. Gary denies, and one of my favorite moments in this season is that they do the tomahawk challenge. I guess you can call it the tomahawk challenge, where they're throwing, and Gary refuses to throw. And they still win because he was playing up this strategy so hard. He refused to give in, and I think that's just amazing. And people can say what they want about Gary. I know Troyzan said that he was a snooze, which is okay because he took Troyzan's spot, so we understand. But I don't think Gary is a snooze. I think Gary's a very good player, and I think he's a very underrated player. And he comes out here as the first real athlete out of the big 4 sports to come on and play this game. And his strategy works because you have Amy sitting here saying, let's find out he's a multimillionaire. I'm going to kill him. Because if they knew, they'd vote him out because they would say he doesn't need it. And that gives them an easy target to get rid of him. And I thought Danny and him talking, and Danny just being like, "Really? I thought you were Gary Ogaboom. Oh, I thought you played I thought you played at Central Michigan." He's like, "Well, I went to Central Michigan. I didn't play there." And it's like, well, your cover's blown now. I mean, she just called you out so hard. There's no way that's just a coincidence. But it's crazy.
I was going to bring up the Central Michigan thing. Like he even keeps the H. Like I think he was Gary Hawkins was the name that he came up with as his pseudonym. But it's like, yeah, I went to the same college. I have the same first name, the same first initial of my last name, but I'm not him. And I'm not going to throw the tomahawk because I'm going to have the most beautiful throw that you'll ever see. Yeah. So, I mean.
And I'm 6'3" and skinny and still clearly in shape.
Right. I don't think in the grand scheme of like famous people or athletes who have come on the show, they are not more engaging, but there is a little more to them. But because he was the first, like, I admire his commitment to staying hidden because he knew, yeah, he's a multimillionaire. Like Amy said, she'll freaking kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, Danny trying to call him out. I do like, though, that Danny tries to call him out. I don't know if Gary ever tells her. I forget what ends up happening if Gary ever tells her that he is Gary Ogaboom. But I love that Danny ends up working with him anyway. And it's almost like, I know your secret. I'm going to keep this going. And like, you can keep denying, but there's no way. And she ends up doing it anyway. And what I like a lot about this season with that is like you had people who were willing to make the move. And I know like it ends up where Danny sides with Gary and Amy, and then they vote out Brian the next time anyway. But then even on the other side, you have Judd who makes the move. And it actually pays off for these people as opposed to in most seasons where people make this move and end up getting booted like Cochran and don't go any further anyway. Or, you know, I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but this happens all the time. It's crazy that it actually works out for Danny and Judd.
Yeah, it does work out really well for them. And I guess we can go into how this tribe swap worked. Danny was in the majority, but I guess the Cochran one was just so dramatic. That was like, what was it, 6'6" or 5'5"? That was just such a blatant switch. I think it helped that, and props to Brian on this, but it helped that Blake was just a pain in the butt. Like that Bait Brian game is unbelievable. That was so funny. I could have watched an entire episode of that.
Yeah, Bait. Like, my new strategy is
drunkest party experience.
Yeah, and
tell me how many girls you've hooked up with.
I love that he's telling the stories with the hat on, and like he can't see anybody, and everybody's just making fun of him in the background. Like, oh my god, he's going again. Here he goes. I mean, it's hilarious. I love it. I think Blake is a very good character for what he is. He's an absolute buffoon, but it's good. It's fun TV. He's not harmful. He's just an idiot, and it's very fun to watch. And I love that his last words are, "I don't know what I did wrong," and it's like I can name everything you did wrong. Like just no self-awareness, and I'm sure I don't know what he ever grew up and ended up doing or anything, but I think that Survivor was like a wake-up call for him because, like Amy said, he's golden boy. He always comes out looking great. And I think there's a reason. I think that he really did until Survivor. That might have been one of the first times he'd ever been knocked down a peg.
Yeah, and they called him Golden Boy at Tribal Council, and he was laughing like, "Oh yeah, I totally am." And they were like, "Yeah, that's his nickname. That's what we call him." My favorite moment of that was, I forget who asked him this question. They were like bombarding him. Oh, they were asking about his girlfriend. He was like,
"Oh my
man,
God,
she's got double D's." And they go to Amy, and she's like, "Not bad." Like she's
Not
like,
bad, yeah.
like nice.
I like too that he goes, "Yeah, they're double D's and they just swelled up." And now they're almost too big. Like
Yeah,
I'm like, what
big.
the hell are we talking about? And like this is like stuff that like I laugh watching this because this is, and we're gonna get into a lot of Steph lines here. But this is stuff that like would never make it nowadays. Like these things would never make the air. They would never have a conversation about a guy talking about his girlfriend's boobs, which is what pisses everybody off. That doesn't happen anymore. Like instead, every conversation that's about a family member or something has to be super emotional. Like with Savage or with Jeremy talking about his wife, it always has to be super. Give us some of this ridiculous fun stuff. We know you're putting people on this show who are this into themselves. That's why they're on reality TV. I mean, a lot of these reality TV stars, they have bigger egos than most people. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's see it. We don't need to see everybody either be calm or just be a villain or just be a hero. Let's see some of this stuff. This is what was fun.
Yeah, and let's go back to Amazon where you have the guys' tribe quite literally fantasizing about the girls' tribe, and it's like, here's my little thought bubble, like how hot Jenna is, like how hot Heidi is. Like that stuff is awesome. And going back to whether or not they'd air it, then let's move on to the Steph thing. So I think they would air maybe not double D's, they would air the My Girlfriend's So Hot thing. But let's add another tally onto the things Steph definitely wouldn't be allowed to say if she was on season 35, which is it's so gay.
Meaning Bobby John coming down the damn cart with his legs flailing in the air. And she says, he's so gay. And then she says, he's like a girl. And I'm like, these are all things like how words, how like meanings have changed just in 12 years of like, they're all just like, yeah, he is. And now it's like,
so good.
They would never air that now, especially if they're trying to play somebody up as like a hero. They would never air something like that. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but then again, I grew up then. So, I mean, it's different. But like, I don't know. It's just crazy. And then, I don't know if you want to keep your Steph tally going, but she did say retarded again at Tribal.
Did she? I totally missed that.
She said it at Tribal. She said something, and she did say it again, and I was like, oh my God. Like, now we're up to 2 or 3 of those. We had her calling Bobby John gay because of how he's acting. I'm like, what is going on?
America's sweetheart crumbling in front of our own eyes.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
It was so funny. And that's the thing. She was. I think someone left a comment. She was never a sweetheart. Like sweetheart isn't the right word. Like she was more of a hero, or like, hey, look, like she survived this. She made it. Doesn't necessarily make her a sweetheart, but now she's just like, we're getting the real stuff. We're getting the whole shebang, and it's hilarious because she's just being real. She's not trying to be funny. She's like, why'd you vote me off? That's retarded. Bobby John's so gay. Like, what the hell? Like, it's so incredibly funny because it's just so natural. It's so raw.
It's so 2005.
So 2005. Also,
it really is.
You must be watching on All Access too. The video quality is horrendous.
Well, because they didn't shoot in HD.
Yeah, it's so sad. It's awful. Like you watch Game Changers and it's like you're in heaven. Like it's so bright.
You really believe that? You really believe watching Game Changers like being in heaven? You want to do a Game Changers rewatch?
We should put Game Changers at #1 instead of Vanuatu. You heard it here first.
I didn't put Vanuatu at #1.
Yeah, but I
don't use this we talk.
I did because I am right.
Yeah, use your own, use your eyes and we's. All right, let's talk about this swap, though, the way they did this swap. I really liked this, not just the swap, but I really liked the way that they did like an almost like auction where people were actually getting things. People actually got an apple. Gary got to shower. They get the picnic up on the thing. And then it all ends with who has the most tribe spirit. And this is the only part of it I didn't like, because I don't like that one person gets stuck like Brian did and like Cindy did. And I know Cindy ends up getting who does she end up getting with her? She ends up getting
hold on, let me pull this up real quick. Cindy gets
Brooke.
Well,
yeah,
we know Judd, Margaret, Stephanie, Lydia, Reef, Jamie, Cindy, Brooke.
Yeah, so she gets Brooke, and so she gets to stay with Brooke, but then she gets the whole other new tribe. So, of course, when Margaret and Judd come back, that's who she's going to end up with. And then the other side, it really is a shame that this happens because, yes, they were able to get one vote to get rid of Blake, but then everybody's so worried about a tie that Brian's in bad shape here because there's one of him and four of them. I would have liked to have seen some sort of like pick 'em thing or something, not just you all have to go. And maybe you have to pick, you go back and forth between picking between your tribe and the other tribe. And I think that would be a lot more fun because if you pick somebody, they feel like they have an allegiance to you. Where now you're just throwing four people on Brian's tribe and he really has no chance to really turn the tables. Because when he comes back, he's only got Gary, he's only got Amy, and Amy wasn't too aligned with them. I know Gary and Brian worked to save Lydia, but we didn't really see Amy working really hard with them, and it seemed like Gary was a little bit closer with Stephanie. So this is like a weird three-person group. And then you have these other four who are just going to like dominate them, and then the other side, the best it can be is 4-4. At least Sydney gets someone with her. It's the only part I didn't like, but I love that they were being inventive with the swaps back then.
Yeah, and they, like you said, it was an auction, and I almost like essentially forgot that it happened because I was thinking like, wow, okay, so there's an auction before the merge. We never see that. And instead of you bidding, you give to others. And Survivor isn't a game of giving, it's a game of taking. So to see them, and after the first go round, once they get the apples, you realize that like you're voting to give people something. So everyone who got something kind of deserved it. And then like Judd gets the picnic, which is a little odd to me, but
so
somehow he gets it. Like Margaret, totally get it, but Judd, whatever.
They
let
could
him
have
have
gone
it.
Brandon. Like, how did it end up being Judd?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know who liked him on his tribe, but clearly he was working because he got a nice picnic at the top of this gorgeous Mayan temple. But yeah, it was just very different from the auctions that we don't even see anymore because we're never going to get an auction again, which is such a shame. But it was such a different twist on both the auctions, somewhat of a reward challenge, and the tribe swap. It was so refreshing. I loved it.
Yeah. And I think it's a really fun idea, and I wish they'd do more things like this where they get creative. I like that these people go away for the picnic and then they do the swap. So these four have no idea what's going on. They come back and it's like, whoa. And this season, Guatemala is one of the seasons where they really started to take chances with some of this stuff. You don't see it too much in Vanuatu. Palau, at least they start playing around with the whole gameplay aspect of it. You get the two people who get booted before the game even starts. You have Janu go to Exile Island. Like, you have things like that. But this was the season where they really started to play with some stuff, and we're going to see it in we just saw in where they do the individual challenge where Rafe wins immunity, and then Rafe gets to give immunity to somebody. And then when Jeff is reading the votes, he reads them as if this is like, now it's almost like the hidden immunity idol thing with the super idol, where you could play the idol after all the votes have been read. That's kind of what was happening, because here's Bobby Johnson, and they're going, oh my God, I have one vote. If this comes out and this is for Brian, I'm going home with one vote. And I think that this is like really interesting that they started to mess around with some of the stuff like this. And I like when they mix up for like people going to different tribes, or like they mix up the tribe swaps. I get tired of sometimes just grab something off the table, like grab something off a plate that Jeff's putting in front of me. It's not as much to look at. It's not as visual. It's not as exciting. I like the one in Gabon.
I was about to reference the one in Gabon. That one was great.
Yeah. There's a lot of great ones.
The Gabon one was great because you are telling your tribe, here is who I value the least. And then that person turns around and picks you. It's great. It goes back to the psychological and sociological game that Survivor is. And this was obviously a little, like, much more out of their hands, but still they technically voted for those tribe captains.
No, they did. They did. And that's what's like kind of crazy here. And I wish they would do something similar to that soon. I don't know when the last time we actually saw like a pick'em or like this type of thing where like it's like a vote or like a bone type thing. It seems like every time now it's just drop your buffs. Here comes Jeff with a tray. Pull one, don't open it. One random person gets sent to exile. I don't know. I like it when people are just, add a little spice to it. Add a little something to it, and I think Guatemala added a nice spice to it. Then we go back to the camps. Judd and Margaret go back with Sydney and Brooke. We have the Blake and Bobby John shaking hands after they take their piss break. That's where they decide to make their alliance. They're literally standing centimeters from each other as they take this pee.
Which I was watching that and I was like, I bet that happens all the time, but we never see it. That's like when Tony had his spy shack in Cagayan. I think Trish was like, yeah, I usually just like pee right there and like watch him hang out in his spy shack. Like they're all peeing near each other. It's nuts. I
know. And we have Judd, who's excited that he's finally the top male. He's banging his chest like he's King Kong, male testosterone, as he calls it.
And he bangs his chest like King Kong. And he said, I'm feeling like King Kong here. And then they immediately cut to those crying monkeys again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was awesome.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, God, sometimes the editing is so good in the show.
It is. And I think this is a really fun pre-merge. Guatemala is a very fun pre-merge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we'll talk about the rest as we get down there. But let's see here. So this episode, we finally have Judd. He makes the change. I thought Margaret actually sitting there talking through this with Judd and saying, look, if you make this flip, like Jamie and Steph jumped right on Judd, and Judd was ready to flip anyway.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting when it was like, if you make this flip, they're going to pick us off one by one. It's going to be 5-3. And how Judd's just like, I don't care. Like, he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And then he instantly votes off Brooke anyway because he doesn't want it to be 4-4. And Margaret was right. The only thing is, Judd got kind of lucky that the 4 people he's working with, I think episode 6, she says, look, Judd embraced it. This is his new tribe. We don't care about the old tribe. And really, this new Nakum tribe doesn't care about the old tribe, as you see moving forward in the season. They don't care.
Yeah, and Judd, it was Judd, Stephanie, and Jamie. They were kind of the first 3 that really got together. And Judd and Stephanie, like, as we know how it turns out, they click immediately. And Jamie also, they all have that strong, aggressive personality. And you think that 3 of those in one alliance would not work out well. But it's pretty impressive that they do, because normally you have someone more subdued like Margaret or Brooke, and then you have your powerhouse personality like Judd, but you have 3 very, very loud personalities in there, and they make it work.
Well, what ends up happening and moving forward is Rafe ends up being really their calm personality in that crazy, crazy alliance. He's the one. I can't wait till they start playing Guatemala. Because that's coming up soon, where he's got to be like calming Jamie down, which is like impossible to do. He ends up being the kind of calm guy, while the rest of them are just insane because they all start pissing each other off. And that's why Steph winds up losing, because she just infuriates everybody because she's such a strong personality.
Yeah, and you wonder how someone like Rafe or like anyone can just handle those personalities. It takes such a strong sense of self to just keep your mouth shut and let Stephanie and Judd scream at everyone.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. What was the challenge? What was the immunity challenge? Oh, it was the tomahawk one.
It was the tomahawk. Yeah. Okay. And that last one was such a far throw. Like that must have taken a while.
But what's more exciting, to watch that or to watch 2 tribes try to solve a 46-letter puzzle that they can't get, so all we see is a time stamp at the bottom that says 45 minutes later, and it's like, okay, that's not exciting.
Yeah, 2 hours later, Ozzy is still hanging on.
These challenges are so much better.
Awesome. And the ball rolling one too. We haven't gotten to that one yet, but
we haven't gotten. Is that the next episode? No, that's in 6, and we got to build that up, because I mean that's like one of the coolest feuds ever, when we get to see Bobby John and in slow motion. Maybe I watched a different episode than you guys, but yeah. All right. So in episode 5, so Brooke goes home. That Cindy, Margaret, they know they're screwed going into the next episode. Brooke goes home. And we go into the next episode, and we have Judd pretty much just going off on Margaret. And Margaret really doesn't seem that mad at Judd. Judd's just so defensive over his moves and feels like he has to defend everything like 1,000-fold.
Yeah, I mean, she was definitely upset. Like, she definitely took that hit, like lost an ally, and was kind of reeling from it, but I think she was just trying to make conversation, and he was just losing his mind. It was like one time in the first 3 episodes when Jeff asked him a question and he went on this like tirade for 45 minutes.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's crazy. Like, and then you see him do it again at the episode 6 Tribal Council, but he just can't help himself. He just keeps going and going and going. And Margaret's like, okay. And Margaret was really playing her own game of bait Judd. Her like did for Brian with Blake.
The thing, I guess what's so insane is that Brian was on a more normal tribe where someone like Blake bothers everyone, but Judd is on a tribe where they kind of don't care.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then we finally do we get to this. This is the first blowout in Survivor Guatemala, this reward challenge, where Brandon chops through this rope like it's nobody's business, and Jamie can't get it done. We have everybody coming down on the damn thing, screaming, and this is when Bobby John gets called gay by Steph, and we have Jamie say, "There's great things that come out of this thing." We have Jamie saying, "Do you guys want to finish?" And Steph's face is like, "What is wrong?" What was going through her head when she said that, for sure. And she's like, "We lost. We're not quitting. The challenge is over. We lost." And I love how like everybody was like, Brandon was amazing, yet they're all still blaming Jamie for the loss, as if any of them would have done better.
Exactly. Brandon does that in his sleep, like every night. And like, I mean, I admire. It's funny because I was about to say I admire Jamie for wanting to keep going, because we know what happened in Game Changers with Sari not finishing the challenge or finishing after the fact. But everyone's just like, what the hell? No. Like, what are you doing, Jamie? Like, it's like as if it was the most insane idea he's ever come up with.
Give me old school Survivor over new school Survivor. That's all I'll say with that. Yeah. And then we have Cindy, who makes the biggest mistake of her life when she says, "I kind of knew the technique. You had to like put it on the edge and chop at it." And Judd, of course, starts flipping out, and he says, "Take the spotlight off us and shine like the star you think you are."
Oh my gosh.
Help himself. He says too much. He keeps on going. He's got the biggest mouth ever, and he's yelling at poor Sydney, who's like, "What did I do? Like, what did I do? I'm just saying, like, I knew the technique." She's like, "I don't have the upper body strength for it." He's like, "Well, if you know the technique, you should," and he just can't stop.
I was watching that portion of the episode, and I think I was cleaning my room at the same time. And I looked, and they win the challenge. Look away. I look back, and Judd is flipping out on her. And I was just like, wait, why did they start yelling at each other? So I had to go back, realize that he just flipped on her because she dare make a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
It's so true. He's so
incredible.
True.
He's absolutely amazing.
I can't believe Judd never came back, and I hear he's just a huge pain in the ass.
I bet.
Which I'm not surprised about. I mean, everybody thinks Jenny's the first one to jump up and start making a scene at Tribal. I mean, Judd does it in tenfold. And then, what do you call it? So now we have like Steph breaking down, crying and everything. And then we finally get to this, this was the reward for the pool too, which I thought was a really cool reward.
Oh, awesome reward. Yeah. And even still, I know a crocodile technically couldn't get in there, but I would still be super nervous.
Me with this is I see this Yaxha tribe and they have this water and everything. Where's Nakum's water?
I'm glad you said that.
Do they have water?
And Nakum won that area. That was the better camp.
Terrible. It seems like there's no water. There's nowhere to go sit. There's nowhere to be. They're always by that pyramid. I don't understand how that's the better of the camps.
Yeah, and at the beginning of episode 4, it's like it's 114 degrees. Brandon has bites on his face. They're everywhere. And then you cut over to the other camp, and Lydia's like frolicking around in the water, and they're like catching minnows. Like they lost and got that beach. They're at such an advantage with that water, even if they can't really swim in it. Just sitting there and playing in it just cools you off.
And I think this was Survivor kind of not taking into account how much the water and how much the heat was going to play into effect in this season, assuming, well, yeah, there's crocodiles, they can't go in the water anyway. But it's just so much better. And I guess Nakum does go in the water at some point because you do have Brandon going out with Bobby, John, and Judd in whatever episode. So they do have water there, but it seems like it's like further away or just they're never there. Whereas the Yaxha is always there.
Yeah, and that's where they're constantly hanging out. Like, I don't really know where they're – it's probably like most of these Fiji seasons where their shelter is just farther back onto the land. But I feel like the camp at the temple, they just sleep right there, and that's it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And then we have – Okay, what were you gonna say? Go ahead.
The one thing I noticed with the reward, the crocodile cage, and I've noticed this in Guatemala and I think it was Samoa. It doesn't happen often, but Stephanie had a confessional hanging out in the cage, and Rafe was like kind of there with her. It's kind of cool when they have these dual confessionals where it's definitely Stephanie's confessional, but people are still actively involved in it. And we never get those anymore. And I love them. They're so much more natural.
Yeah, it's not just somebody talking off to the side. It's somebody talking to the camera while they just happen to have won a reward or whatever they won. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking. It wasn't in the cage, though, because Stephanie didn't win the cage.
Oh, then where the heck was it?
I know what you're talking about, though. I remember that.
There was Margaret. Oh, Margaret and Cindy were talking about the missing beers. I do remember that.
Oh my God, the missing beers. Awesome. That's episode 6. Let's finish episode 5, which I think is the least. I think episode 5 is a great episode. I think episode 6 is another really good episode. Mm-hmm. I think these are like 2 of like the better pre-merge episodes here. But you have Brian and Blake sleeping under the tent while everybody else is like standing there huddled, like freezing, and that's when Amy starts calling him Golden Boy because somebody comes out looking good. And then we find out later that Brian actually got up and went over and took his shift, but Blake never moved. All of this leads to this. What was this challenge? This was the one where they had a catch in the nets.
Who's smiling now?
Now. And Bobby John just like yells. Like, he doesn't yell at anyone, he just kind of yells. And it's like so weird. And then this all ends with wins. Nakum goes back and Nakum's like, they're such sore winners. Oh my God, they're the worst. They're such and I'm like, what did you guys just do? You guys just rubbed it in so hard.
This entire cast is a bunch of massive hypocrites. It's hilarious.
It's so funny. I mean, they're so out of touch with it. They're calling them sore winners and everything. They're so mad at how Jamie was acting and stuff. It's like, you guys are coming down. Bobby John's literally got his feet in the air screaming as they're going down. Like, it's happening nonstop.
And even before Bobby John screams to the sky, Jamie does the "who's smiling now?" And you look at Bobby John and he's like about to cry. Like his ego just cannot handle it.
No. And I think Jamie says it in the next episode after the actual confrontation. He says, us Southern people were crazy. And like, I think Jamie knows he's crazy. So I give him credit for realizing he's crazy. But like, my God, man, they're crazy. Like, they cannot stop. And then we also had before this even, I mean, the only reason that was Nakum. Nakum wins. The only reason Nakum wins is because Lydia pumps them up. Let's be honest.
Oh, that was so funny because like cute little Lydia, she's like, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to make their day. It's going to be great. We're going to win a challenge. And she's dancing and being all cute. And you cut to everyone and they're just like looking dead, like just like bored.
They end up laughing. They do end up laughing.
I
love Steph going, where's Lydia? Bring back the one we love. What happened between yesterday and today?
I know. Like, this is Lydia that I love.
Doing the pancake.
Oh my gosh. She was so funny. That was great. That's the reason they won.
Yeah, that's what we'll say.
Yeah.
All right, so they go back. They finally get to convince. I mean, Gary, Brian, and Amy convince Danny to flip. Danny convinces Bobby John to flip. I thought it was Brandon at first. It was actually Bobby John who voted out Blake. Blake goes home. Blake brought nothing with him to tribal council.
No. He was so kind. He was the golden boy. Why would you vote the golden boy out?
He thought he had no chance. It's so funny.
It's incredible. And Bobby John said something at tribal council that I actually had to rewind and listen to make sure he actually said this. He said, it was the last thing that he said before Jeff sent them off to vote. And he goes, I don't like to be the end of somebody's dream. I like to keep the dream alive. Or this might have been right before they went to tribal council. And I was like, what inspirational quote book did he find before he went off to Guatemala to say that quote? That was just so out of place. And maybe because we haven't heard anything from Bobby John and that's the first thing he says, I was just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, no, I totally did not feel like a Bobby John line. Totally feels like somebody stole that. Yeah, no, I totally hear you on that. And then we go to episode 6 where we finally get the shouting match between Jamie and Bobby John, who I don't know what they do other than like kind of kiss and like rub their faces on each other.
Yeah, that was some softcore porn.
Yeah, I guess we'd go with that. And here we have them running at this ball, pushing this ball. It's a fun challenge too. This takes up most of the episode. Really, episode 6 is Beergate, and then the 2 tribals. I mean, that's really all it is. But this is an intense challenge. You have Amy getting plowed over, then getting up and winning it anyway, and then their tribe loses because Jud's just too good in this challenge. No matter what, even like Brian put up a good fight for a little bit. Brandon's put up a good fight for a little bit. No matter what, nobody's going to beat Judd in this because Judd's just too big of a guy.
Exactly. Yeah, he was pushing that thing around like it was a basketball. Like it was nothing to him. That Amy thing was great, and it was so sad that she didn't end up winning the challenge. But she couldn't even put weight on that thing. Like she was hobbling around and shoving it, and she still gets the point.
Yeah, she still gets it. Like I said, we have this Bobby, John, Jamie, which is really the highlight of that episode. That was like all over the place. People really thought that they were going to hit each other. I remember when this aired, like people really thought that somebody was going to hit each other. And then the challenge. Go ahead.
I was about to say, it was just like, it's like you're walking your dog down the street and you see another dog coming. And they're kind of looking at each other and they're kind of sniffing, and one of them like pees on the wrong tree, and out of nowhere, the first dog is just like harassing them and they start screaming at each other. And you're just like, what? Why did this happen? Where did this come from?
Yeah, exactly. Like, why is this happening? And like, I love that they cut to like Brian and Gary who are just like kind of staring, like, what is going on here?
What the heck?
So this all happens, and we leave this challenge, or we go to the individual portion. And I think my favorite part of this individual portion is that Judd gets the answer right, but he couldn't untie the bag, and Rafe had ancient spelled out. I don't understand why I couldn't figure out it was ruined.
I can't either. I mean, I don't know what else you could do with those 4 letters. I don't know. It's no metamorphosis. I know that.
He was staring at it, and he couldn't figure it out. And it's just ancient ruin, and Judd's telling him, and Judd's like, I didn't think I was that smart.
Ancient ruin. Yeah, I didn't think I was that smart. And then all of a sudden, like he's like, you're welcome, Rafe. Like it's like he won the challenge, which I mean, technically he helped him, but it's Judd's world, and we are all living in it.
Yeah, and the good thing for Judd is that that's how confident Judd was, though. And that's why, like, he never had a doubt Margaret was going home that night. He had no doubt. I think Margaret was disliked by more than just Judd. That she was probably a negative force after Brooke went home. She wanted to be in control, and she wasn't. But Judd's crazy. And this whole thing with them going back with this Beergate thing where people are trading beers for hot dogs, and Judd's just getting every beer he can get. And somebody drinks the extra beer, and he starts yelling at them. And he's saying, I deserved a beer. Maybe I did have the other beer. I don't know. Maybe, like, whatever. And then finally he says, everyone can kiss my ass. Hope you enjoyed your hot dog and hamburger. While he's sitting on his little perch. And it's like, my God, he's going to lose. Like, what is wrong with him?
Like, how could this guy ever possibly win the $1 million? There's, like, no chance. He's, like we said last time, I am so glad he's on my TV, but you could not pay me to live on an island with him and trade hot dogs for beers.
No, it's crazy. And like Cindy, I mean, Cindy's probably one of the quietest people like to play. And she's just like, why is he like, he's got to watch himself. Why is he yelling at everyone? Like, why is he doing this? And then you have freaking, you have Bobby John at the other camp thinking he put Jamie in his place. He's sitting there telling everybody, like, I put Jamie in his place. Like, I showed him. And it's like, Bobby John, you looked like a buffoon. Like, what are you talking about?
Your hair was, like, electrocuted. Like, you were flipping out for no reason. Jamie wasn't even looking at him. He was just screaming at himself that he got the point. It was incredible. I will rewatch that scene so many times.
Yeah, it's great. So Rafe wins the individual immunity. They go to the first tribal council, which is just an insane tribal council with Judd yelling at Margaret. Margaret never raises her voice, but she just keeps giving it back. And she's 100% right when she's like, this is what it's like with Judd every time. Can't have a conversation with him. He's a bully. He yells over everybody. This is what he does. And I love that she says that, and Judd gets mad at her. And then, like, she says, like, he's a bad sportsman. He goes, I don't think we are bad sportsmanships.
Oh, amazing.
But it's gold. And I'm like, but, like, he can't keep it together. And then when she says, you don't listen to anybody, and he starts going around, do I listen to you? Do I listen to you? Do I listen to you? And he gets to Rafe, and Rafe goes to give an answer. And Jamie goes, have an opinion, Rafe. And Rafe goes, well, I'm about to give my, and Judd just cuts him off. He's like, fine, Stephanie, do I listen to you? And it's like, you just proved you don't listen to anyone.
Exactly. And they just let it happen. It's hilarious. It's kind of like, I can't think of the exact example, but someone's like, oh, yeah, Alexa's on the bottom. And then everyone in my alliance is like, here's who's in our alliance. Oh, and Alexa, we forgot about you. Like, they just completely proved Margaret's point. And he didn't even try. That was just naturally how he is.
Yeah. I know. And her calling him a bad sport. And like Jamie and Judd are getting mad at her for that. And it's like, you're being a bad sport now. You might not have lost the game, but you're being a total child. Like you can't help yourself. I think that's like a great, I know I'm reading our chat here where people don't necessarily love this, but I love this tribal council. I think this is a great tribal council. I mean, it shows it shows for who they really are in this tribal council. How Margaret's never doing anything, not doing anything. Judd is going off. Jamie's defending Judd, and everybody else is just kind of like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I love this tribal council, not because of the outcome. Like, I would much prefer Margaret have stayed because I thought she was great. But it's just great. It's incredible because it's just raw emotions. There's no idols floating around yet. It's no just tricking each other. It's just like Margaret is trying to be a rational human being and trying to explain to Jeff, who is probably another rational human being, why everyone around her is irrational, and they're acting irrationally and then vote her out. It's just human nature at its finest. It's depressing, but it's hilarious.
And then Jeff tries to get them to go up and do whatever, and Judd hops to his feet. Can I say one more thing? And it's like, dude, you're not helping your cause, but somehow you're helping your cause. Like that was just a roast of Margaret by Judd, and she was roasting him in her own way. Margaret is not completely. Margaret was trolling the crap out of Judd here.
Oh, it was awesome.
She got under his skin good, and she did it on purpose. So I don't want to hear that Margaret is totally in the right here. I'm not saying what she did was wrong, but what she was doing this to get a reaction out of Judd. Judd just does it in a louder, probably stupider, if you want to call it that way, whereas Margaret does it in a subtler way. But she was doing to Judd exactly what Judd was doing to her in their own ways.
Well, I think Margaret probably knew that there wasn't much she could do because they became such a tight-knit group so quickly that she was like, all right, if I'm going to go home, I'm not going to go down swinging and make a mess. I'm going to let the person who they're deciding to keep make a mess of themselves, and I'm just going to sit there and let them enjoy it.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, these 3 episodes are the beginning. Like, this is Judd's storyline of crazy, 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 and then finally when he gets blindsided, it's like, whoa. Like, it all builds to that moment. Love that Rafe gets to sit in, since the other tribe doesn't actually get to win an immunity after this. So Margaret goes home 7-1. I mean, it's not even close, or 6-1, whatever it is. And then Rafe goes and sits on the other side, and he watches this entire tribal. And they build up Brian so much.
Oh, yeah.
They're even building up Amy. And I bet we didn't see a lot of the Gary conversation going on. But I bet they were probably not building up Gary as much as they were Amy and Brian, considering Amy and Brian were the 2 on the chopping block. And maybe that's why Rafe didn't give his idol to Brian or Amy and instead gave it to Gary. Maybe he actually thought Gary was in the most danger. But what I find interesting about this is I don't know if Rafe purposely did this to not affect the vote. Maybe he did know it was coming down to Amy or Brian and he didn't want to affect the vote, so he gave it to Gary. But what's so interesting here is Rafe could have given that to Brian and gotten rid of the strongest member of that tribe, which is Bobby John, in no problem. Yeah,
that could have changed the complete course of the game.
And it would have been – I think that Guatemala is a better – I think the outcome – I think the rest of the season is better if Bobby John goes here instead of Brian. I really do. I think that Brian going here – I think that if that vote would have said Brian on it, Bobby John goes home. Brian is saved. It's an iconic moment. Bobby John goes, and Brandon does better. You have Brian do better. Amy does better. Gary does better. Like all of like there's more complexity to this post merge because once the merge hits, this season loses all of its complexity. It really does. It becomes a very straightforward Yaxha versus Nakum right through the end, and it's not as exciting as had this vote been for Bobby John. Got to remember, I don't want to spoil too much of next episodes in case people like aren't familiar with them or don't really remember them. But the moment at the merge is one of my least favorite moments ever because of why the person goes home over the other. It's so frustrating. I absolutely hate it. And that's but anyway.
And the thing with Brian going home is I don't believe he was robbed. Like, none of that. But we lost such a good character and a really good player. Him saving Lydia and then him getting rid of Blake, those were 2 huge moves that people probably have gone on to forget because Brian ends up going pre-merge, but he was so captivating. His confessionals are incredible. He's so funny. He really knows what he's doing. He is such a good character that I really didn't remember much of my first go around, but he's great. I don't know if we'll ever get him again, but if there's another second chance, he's getting all my votes.
Yeah, we won't ever get him again, but I think that Brian is such a good new school player. Mm-hmm. And by the fact that he was stuck playing in Guatemala, where people were worried about ties, and Gary and Amy, I know Gary and Danny had talked prior to this, and that's why Gary ends up saying, okay, I'll side with that side. Because he had talked to Danny, and I know him and Danny had gotten closer. And so they end up voting out Brian because he's a little bit weaker. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to me that this is the case because I bet you in a new school season, this is the episode where Bobby John goes home. I really do think that.
Yeah, because I mean, they're still voting like with not much time up until the merge. They're still voting based on strength, and you never see that anymore. You're getting rid of your Aussies right now.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
Yeah,
it's so true.
So different.
Very different, and then we see moving forward the reasons for some of the boots and the order. It's God, this season. Okay, so. We have a lot of comments. Let's do some comments. We didn't really do too many comments last time, but
sure. Where do we want it? You on Twitter first or YouTube?
Yeah, let's do Twitter. Bobby John, he's so gay, so un-PC. I couldn't stop laughing. That's from James Survivor fan. I mean, Hilarious. It's just so weird. You have to like adjust your ears to watch something that's in the past. Steel Punch, Brandon seems like he is the true survivor out there. Brandon's a very, very, very forgotten character. I know that he has some diehard fans in the Survivor community, but he's a very forgotten character. I love Brandon. I think Brandon is a great survivor, and I do think he was robbed, which we'll talk once the merge hits. I think he was super robbed. I would have loved to see Brandon play again. I think he's a very interesting character. He was very young at this time, too. He's a good narrator. He was 22.
Wow. That is so young.
I know.
No, where are you getting these comments?
I'm on Twitter. Ice X, the lack of future returnees from Guatemala will forever remain a mystery, like Jimmy Hoffa's location or Jack the Ripper's identity. And then he says the swaps, the tribal council sit-ins, tough and varied challenges, interesting players, brutal conditions equals great pre-merge. And I couldn't agree more. This pre-merge is fantastic.
Yeah, and these conditions, people never talk about Guatemala as one of the most difficult physically seasons, but it is brutal. They spend the first 15 minutes of episode 4 just cutting to everyone collapsed on the ground. It's nuts.
Wait, is that the one? That's with the killer bees, right?
Oh yes, you want to talk about the killer bees? Have your rants.
Yeah, they're all. Well, I just think it's so funny that this is what Judd brings up. I'm sorry, I just think this is hilarious. So they're all being attacked by these mosquitoes and stuff, and he goes, "It's like the killer bees, man." It's a TV movie from the 1970s that stars a bunch of nobodies, and then Gloria Swanson, who, I mean, I'm a big movie buff guy, so to see that Gloria Swanson, that's where her career ended, really blows my mind. But that's what Judd mentions. That's the movie that comes to Judd's mind, a movie that he probably saw when he was 7 or 8 years old on damn TV. I don't know, it's just so weird to me that it's the killer bees. And I was laughing about it because I'm just he would that would be him.
That's his go-to movie. That's his let's stay in on a Saturday night, grab some popcorn, and watch the Killer Bees TV movie.
Let's watch the Killer Bees.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. Hold on, I caught up to you, so I can help you out here. Gamer Girl. I noticed during the episode 5, next time on Survivor segment, they do not mention that 2 people are going home in episode 6. That's a good point. I love that because you don't know. Like you said, it's not just drop your buffs, cut to commercial. We don't know that 2 people are going home. It's an air of mystery that we just don't get anymore.
It used to be really exciting when you'd watch the episode with your family or whatever, and then after the episode ended, it'd be do you think they're gonna switch next week? Do you think they're gonna swap? That was so much fun. Now it's just oh, they're switching next week. Okay, cool. Moving on. It was so much fun, and I actually think Game Changers did a pretty good job. Was it Game Changers? It was Game Changers, where they did a pretty good job of not really telling you every time they were going to swap and all that, or at least they weren't telling you how the tribes are going to shape up.
Because they told you they were swapping. They told you they were swapping. We just didn't know who it was.
Which is great because now it's gotten to the point where we know the tribes before the episode even starts, and I like that we don't know But back then, I mean, it would be like, wait, are they going to swap? Are we getting a double boot? Like, you never saw this stuff coming. So when you heard it there, you're like, wow, this is really cool. And like, then it becomes a talking point.
Yeah, but we still, in Game Changers, we still got a drop your buffs, and that was it. That's all we got. I think it was either for the merge or the first swap, but it was so blatantly obvious. And yeah, we weren't formally told it was a swap or merge, but when they said drop your buffs, it's like, okay, well, that's what's happening next week.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, exactly. I know. Kimberly Burquest, I don't understand why no one has come back. I love Danny. She's one of my favorites.
It's a lot of good characters, and they're locked in a basement somewhere.
With Judd. Judd locked them.
Yeah. Giovanni Oriana is Judd the George Costanza of Survivor because of his over-the-top performance to Tribal Council, and if not, who is? I think that's significantly more obnoxious.
He's more no, I don't know about that. George Costanza is one of the most obnoxious TV characters of all time.
But is he mean?
It seems like everybody likes Judd except Margaret.
That's what's so insane. They like him.
Yeah, I know. But I don't think he's necessarily like a bad guy. I just think like he is probably the George Costanza. Everything's wrong. Everything's just wrong nonstop. And he just can't stop himself from going over the top every time. He makes his own problems. Gamer Girl, I was not a fan of the Margaret Tribal Council. It's very uncomfortable for me to watch. We've talked so much about that tribal. I mean, I could see why it's uncomfortable, but I think it's a really great moments of TV.
Where did you see?
Giovanni Rihanna, Lydia is a worse challenge competitor than Courtney, Sandra, and Scout combined. Lydia's not that bad. She's not good, but she's not that bad.
Oh, Courtney is awful. Remember when she was trying to chop that thing? She wasn't, excuse me, she wasn't even trying. She had that sword and she was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And it was hilarious. But Lydia is not that bad. Yeah, she traveled in that basketball game, but she's pulling her weight. For what you're signing up for with Lydia, you're getting a decent amount. I don't know. There's a lot of Lydia hate, and I don't know why. I think she's great.
I mean, Lydia brought to the table exactly what Survivor wanted Lydia to bring to the table.
Exactly, and that's why I'm happy with her. She's like more fun.
Yeah, I think I like Lydia. Are you doing these or what's going on, Alexa?
I don't know where you're. So I got the Lydia's worst challenge competitor, but I didn't see the Gamer Girl question, so now I feel like I'm lost.
Well, then there's another Gamer Girl that says there's a blinking you missed moment from previously on segment, episode 4. When Jeff was talking about Brian cheering up his tribe, you can see Jamie's hand going to cover up Brian's mouth. That made me laugh so hard. I did notice that. Because he's obnoxious.
I don't see that tweet either, so I'm just gonna wait.
Wow. I'll just keep reading. Gamer Girl, where was Rafe in episode 4 and 5? You got no confessionals. I don't remember him getting confessionals in episode 4 and 5. He definitely does in episode 4 because he talks about how good him and Gary are at fishing. They're great fishing buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might have been one of the confessionals you were talking about because he's sitting there on the dock and there's people behind him.
Yeah, that probably was the one that I was talking about. But yeah, he's been a little quiet, but he's been pretty instrumental. It's one of those things where he's involved. We're just not getting one-on-one time with him.
I agree. And but then we get so much of him in episode 6 because he wins the immunity and gets to go sit there and do stuff like that. So yeah,
right.
Steph eats up so much time in this season that you can't really. It's hard with everybody else.
For sure. All right, I'm caught up now.
Do you see the next Gamer?
Well, no, I can see them. Just the first 2 ones that you mentioned just aren't on there. So I don't know where I missed those. But the next one I have is Larry Miller. Do you see that?
Yeah, but I don't understand the question.
Is Lydia on your worst finale players? Because she should be number 2. Number 1 is Wyatt Nash.
Who's
worst
Wyatt Nash?
finale players? Oh, Wyatt Nash. That's Matt in Redemption Island. Wait, in the grand scheme of worst finale players, Matt isn't even the worst in there. How about Philip?
No, Matt's the worst by far. You didn't do this with me and Will. I made my argument for why Matt is the worst finale Survivor player of all time is because he literally got voted out because he was a terrible player, gets back in the game, immediately gets voted out again, literally only gets to the finale because he won challenges. He's a horrible Survivor player. He got voted out twice and made it to a finale. For the exact same reason. And the only reason he stuck around was because he kept winning challenges. He is up against, he beats Francesca. He's the second boot of that season because he's such a bad player. And he's a young, strong guy who should hang around. He wins every challenge, gets back in the game, and immediately gets blindsided again because he just was terrible. Matt is the worst finale player by far ever in the history of that. He's not a Survivor player. He just played challenges. He went out there and played games. He's a horrible player.
He is a Survivor player, if we're going to get technical, but yes, he is awful.
Horrible. Anyway, but Lydia is definitely not number 2. I don't think, no, not at all. I mean,
how about
Butch
Susie?
Is worse.
Like, yeah.
Susie. There's
Clay.
a lot of worse players. We could go through Clay. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Clay or Jan.
Nowhere near the worst. Who?
There's a lot of bad ones. Jan from Thailand as well. Who got third. Okay.
Anyways.
Gamer Girl, who do you think is the season's tribe swap victim, if it has one? It's Brian.
Yeah. It's
I think easily. I think Brooke probably is a victim of a swap, but I also think that her days were numbered. And I also think Margaret's days were numbered. I don't think Brian's days were numbered.
Yeah, and Brooke was one of those players who she was voted out, and they walk in, and Jeff's like, Brooke voted out of the last tribal council, and everyone's like, okay. Like, there was not much of a reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Giovanni, Oriana, are Jamie and Bobby John fighting over the last slice of pizza? They might as well. It would make it even more hilarious. I think what's so funny is that they're not really fighting about anything. They're just fighting because they're two guys from the South, and that's what they do.
Alabama and Georgia have this little rivalry going on. I don't know if you guys know about it. Like that's what I'm like, this is really what we're going into now.
Like, really? Where you're from? Do you even know that you're from each other? From there? Like, how do you actually know that? You could be lying.
That's why you instantly don't like each other.
Oh my gosh.
It's Timmy McCormick. Hey guys, I love your podcast. Never missed an episode. Why do you guys think Brian went before Amy? Also, why did Rafe give Gary immunity? I kind of tried to guess on the Gary thing. I think Brian went before Amy because I think Amy was more willing to work with Danny and Gary.
Yeah, and I think Amy wasn't as, like you said earlier, Amy wasn't as tied to that group. So during the swap, it was more of like a necessity kind of thing. And I think Amy was in, not necessarily in desperation mode, but I think she gives off the vibe of like, hey, if I like you, we'll work together. When Brian was very clearly strategizing. Yeah,
and then another thing too is you got to remember, Brian has this stigma of being voted the most tribe spirit for Yaxha. So who's the least likely to work with old Nakum? It's Brian.
Exactly. And when I'm reading that, he spelled it Amy, A-M-I, and I was like, Amy Cusack's on this season. What did I miss here?
Wouldn't that make you happy?
That would make me so happy.
What's the next one?
Giovanni Oriana, what do you think of the tribal council set? Kind of talked about this in last week's podcast, but I love it. That walk up the stairs, that would tire me out. I would just like make someone else vote for me.
Yeah, and I love like Cindy every time runs up and skips a step. Like they always show her doing that, and it's so funny. It's so like they're cute. Like almost like, here's the joke. Yeah.
Here's your daily joke.
Yeah. We have Travis Herod. Can we consider Danny a game changer because she was the first new player to beat a returning at the final tribal council, paving the way for Sophie and Denise?
Yeah. Well, Danny's a game changer for
a why not?
Reasons. She wasn't she on the short list for game changers?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she's definitely a game changer.
Go ahead, read the next one here.
Yo, you just lost me.
Okay. Dame Brooks Hammett. Danny and Bobby John voting out Blake is a dumb, forgotten move, considering what happens at the merge. And this is a move that could be considered dumb had one of those people not gone on to win the game. If Danny doesn't win the game, this is a horrible move. But because she wins, it really shows she was looking so far ahead. I can make this work with these other people like Gary, like Amy. I don't think they were assuming they were going to lose. They were going to have to lose 2 more people before the merge hit. And she's saying, I can work with these people because, look, I'm showing that I'm willing to.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you could say it was a dumb move for Bobby John, but for Danny ends up winning. So clearly it ends up working out for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I found it. Larry Miller. Would Shireen like Judd or hate him because he's a man? Oh my gosh.
She would hate him, man. She would hate him, man. Man, she would hate him.
Man.
Because he's got ADD, man.
So Shireen told me I have ADD.
Man.
Man.
I would say Shireen and Judd on an island together would not end well.
I would just want a season with those two. Like, I don't need anyone else.
I wonder if they, like, even like now, I know they probably don't even consider Judd, but I wonder if they would put Judd back on the show, who at the time, like, everybody kind of like liked him, even though he was like a boss this way. He's a big personality that's memorable. But I wonder if they would even put him on the show nowadays because of all the controversy he would obviously cause.
But I think his controversy isn't. He's kind of harmless. Like he's a jerk, but I don't know if he's gonna like go to the point of. Well, I was about to say go to the point of personally insulting people, but clearly he has no problem with that.
That's clearly what he's doing. And like you have somebody like Jason.
Too far.
You have somebody like Jason who's nowhere near as bad as him. Mm-hmm. And they played him up. Dan Foley is nowhere near as bad as Judd is. Nowhere near. Dan Foley says some stupid things, but Dan Foley is nowhere near as bad as Judd is in this season. And Dan Foley gets played up as like one of the ultimate villains because, yeah, go listen to my recap of that finale. But my God, Dan Foley gets played up like he's some bad, like the worst human ever because he just says dumb things out on the island when he's hungry and whatever. Like Judd is so much worse than that. So much worse.
Thing is that Dan, I know this is so relevant, but Dan Foley's thing is like we're gonna complain about Dan Foley and no one's gonna talk about Will. Like
I know
the mental gymnastics it takes. I don't know, but yeah, Judd. The thing with Judd is I think he's kind of I just think he's harmless. He's silly.
I agree. Let's see here. So we have Giovanni Rihanna. Rave is underrated in challenges and is the best player of Guatemala by far. Mm-hmm. He is underrated.
He's so underrated. I'd love for him to come back.
I guess he couldn't do a puzzle too well.
Yeah, he couldn't spell ruin. That's an extremely good point. Maybe he's overrated.
Hard word to spell. That's 4 letters. Do you have the gamer girl on here?
No. Why don't I don't see the gamer girl ones?
Ice axe.
Yeah, I see that.
A lot of business decisions occur between urinals. This one just happened to be outdoors. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of important things happen at urinals, but I wouldn't know. Ice axe again. Bring back the big ball in the midst of a pinball machine full of trees, no less. Yeah, I guess that's a life-size pinball machine.
I really like this challenge, and I liked when like Bobby John and Brandon sprinted out as fast as they could and hit it so hard, and they were just jolted backwards because I don't think they realized how hard that thing was flying.
Yeah, that thing was like it was huge. It looked like it could have been light, but then once you get like some momentum, you just whack into a tree.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that they had the obstacles in the middle. It made it better.
Yeah, for sure.
Gamer Girl says, for Bobby, John, and Jamie rivalry, it didn't look like they were angry. They looked like they were doing it for fun. No, they were angry.
Is that how people have fun? I gotta change my go by having fun.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Read that last one there. Do you see it?
Phil, you have A, D, D, and are a bad sportsmanship.
Thank you. I wanted you to read it to me so that I knew. Connor Berry, this is on YouTube. Connor Berry started to be doing this first Guatemala watch ever, and these first three episodes have been great. Yes, so these are some about the first 3 episodes too, but we might as well talk about them. We have Vince Banks. Can't wait to listen to this one. I get some time going to enjoy this. Hey, since you guys are such big fans of Lost, and you should watch The Leftovers if you haven't yet. And
you love The Leftovers.
Yeah. Hey, Vince, you should listen to our other stuff.
Yeah, listen to our. I know the Lost thing. We're trying. We just don't know how much we can do it at once.
AVP. Jim revealed in a Survivor Oz interview the tribe agreed to vote out Cindy after the first challenge, but he volunteered to go because of his arm. He had them pull corn to decide. He voted for to decide who he voted for, and Margaret pulled the blue piece. Everybody else pulled yellow. And it was revealed Judd mixed up the drinking water pot with the dirty water, and it just so happened the guys were the ones who drank it.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, like those are like cool behind the scenes things that you like don't get to know these days so much because from like the older seasons, because a lot of it was this was kind of before like the big exit interviews and all of that.
Yeah. Oh, that is such a fun fact. And here we're thinking like, how did only they get affected? What was it?
Yeah. No, totally. Like that totally makes so much sense. Brian, I have to say I'm loving the first 3 episodes so far. I haven't rewatched in years. Stephanie and Bobby John appearing at the top of the pyramid was still epic. The first strike was brutal. Blake was still sick 5 days later because of it. When Blake and Bobby John were passing out, it reminded me of Caleb and Margaret. Nursing them was pretty amazing. I also like Sydney, Jamie, and Brandon after that first episode.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, Jamie, we're not getting much out of Jamie we're getting a little bit more now, but Cindy, we're really not seeing much of.
Yeah, Sydney's probably I think she's kind of like the invisible character of this season. I think it's Sydney. She does play a part in one of the biggest moments of the season, but I do think she's like the invisible character.
She's invisible up until she's not.
Yeah, it's pretty late.
Mm-hmm. And 5.
Yeah, pretty much. And the thing with Sydney is if you think about her and the scheme of the players on this season, she is the least interesting. You have these very loud, or even the people who aren't loud, like Gary, who's very Gary's just like an ex-NFL player, so of course he's going to be there. Danny's the winner, so of course she's going to be there. Mm-hmm. Sydney's a very quiet player on this season, and that's kind of, I think, why she gets kind of overshadowed just by how loud everybody else is.
And I can't tell if it's just this season or if she's a quiet player overall. I think it's a combination of both. I think either way, no matter what kind of season she's on, it would still be, we still wouldn't be getting a ton of her.
Yeah, no, obviously. I don't think so either. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have Brian says, Phil, you knew someone who personally knew Steph. I'm so jealous. I would love to see your application video. I would love to see it too.
Yeah, we got to find that thing.
I know. I wish the guy I used to work with had it. Remember, this was the day of VHSs, so this isn't like internet all over the place stuff.
We should start a Kickstarter to get enough money to convert that VHS to a YouTube video.
What an expensive Kickstarter that would be.
First we got to find a VHS.
Yeah, right. Claire Burney asks how we rewatch these episodes, and we do it on CBS All Access. There's plenty of ways.
CBS All Access, and I'm sure you can find them online somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We'll try hard enough.
Yeah. Let's see. Mandy Brown, I was thinking about the same thing with medical. I bet they had to make medical more diligent so as to not get sued.
Yeah.
They were leaving them out to dry there.
Yeah, quite literally.
Yeah. SpongeBob when he comes out of the water.
Okay, I'm caught up. KEB LOL. Stephanie is my all-time favorite player in the game, and it was because of this season.
That's really a shame. Jeez.
Oh man. Hey, I mean, but if she's your cup of tea, she's pretty darn funny.
I like Stephanie. I think it's fine.
I just think it's funny that she's absolutely shattered the kind of America's hero thing and just becomes this sassy whatever. I love her.
Yeah, I think she's perfect. Whatever. I'm fine with it, but I just like that she's more real in this season as opposed to the first one where they couldn't show her being bad at all. Selly 11395. I think it's funny how Stephanie gets this America's Sweetheart label in Palau, but whenever I watch Palau, I don't see her being sweet. To me, she seems the same as she was in Guatemala. I never saw her as sweet.
Yeah, wow, that was perfect. Perfect segue. Yeah, I don't know if it's like we were saying, maybe it's not sweetheart, but she's a hero in a sense.
Yeah, because she's the last one surviving. She's, she's viewed as a very, very strong woman. So obviously, there's moments here.
Yeah. Let's see. RX13. Does Phil have a crush on Morgan? But her name's not Michelle. Also, Alexa looks suntanned. And Phil, what did I say about being beardless?
My beard's back now. It grows back. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
Of course I had a crush on Morgan. Morgan was the best character on this season.
Yeah, obviously. There's a lot of content.
I apologize for anybody who was offended by my wand comment. It came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it to come out that way.
Yeah, I was about to say that was not family friendly. But we also have been talking about boobs, so that went out the window.
Hey. Why not, right? Gamer girl, Jamie and Sydney were almost considered for Blood vs. Water with their twin siblings. Rami for Jamie and Mindy for Sydney, but they were cut or something. Also, very fun fact that I heard from Blake. I know for you, those of you who watched our season recap of 34, you saw Blake for that little bit. Blake is a diehard Survivor fan. He brought up a great point. He's a little bit older than I am, so he really remembers when this season was airing. Judd also has a twin. So there's 3 pairs of people on this season who have 3 people on this season who have twins. Judd has a twin. And this was back during the time when they used to do the "We're so proud of you" moments. I think it was brought to you by Febreze. And they would have your whole family sitting in the room, and they'd be like, "We're so proud of you, great job," like whatever they did. Well, Judd's brother decided not to shave the entire time Judd was out there. So when Judd gets booted, they go to his brother, who looks exactly like Judd, and it looks like Judd's in the room with his family.
Oh man, that is so funny.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like, Blake brought that up, and that's one of those things I don't think he can find anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to see that. I was about to say, I'm going to look for that later, but I doubt I'd be able to find that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see. Brandon O'Leary, you guys are awesome. So glad you guys continue to get excited and discuss older seasons with the same amount of optimism. Personally, I have Guatemala around 17th on my own season rankings. I just love Stephanie's story in it. 17th is pretty high for me and you. Where did Will put it? He had it in a higher position.
He had it like 12, I think. He had it right outside his top 10.
I mean, pre-merge is
this season will move up for me. I think this season will move up for me after the rewatch, but it's not moving up that much further just because I know why I didn't love this season. I know. And right now I love this pre-merge. If we were talking about this season week by week, I would be like, this could be one of the best seasons ever. If this was something that we were doing and this was a new season and all that, I'd be like, this could be one of the best seasons ever.
I mean, I feel like we're watching the first handful of episodes from Game Changers. And we're like, we know what's
sort of.
But it's like we know, but in the sense of we know what's coming at the merge, we know it's not going to be good. So let's enjoy what we have right now.
Yeah, which was still awful.
It's not nearly as good.
We have Giovanni Oriana. The best part of the podcast was Phil's inappropriate, out of context quote about Morgan and Abracadabra. I don't know where it came from. I swear it made sense in my head.
It was a moment of weakness.
Yeah.
RX 13, 2 things I noticed that you guys didn't bring up. One, when Jeff said to the contestants, "Welcome to Survivor Guatemala," they didn't clap. Normally contestants clap when Jeff says to them, "Welcome to Survivor so-and-so." Maybe they were just really not happy to be there. 2, when Bobby, John, and Stephanie have confessionals, they have their professions next to their names and not what season they're from. Good catch.
Amazing, right? Back when people were more than Palau or Boston Rob's wife or whatever, like Tyson's girlfriend.
I like how Amber's Boston Rob's wife before she's Boston Rob's wife.
I bet you if they put Boston Rob on like a season and Amber came out to visit, it would say Boston Rob's wife.
Yeah. Instead of when
Which is so funny.
When Monica Culpepper comes out, Jeff was like, everyone who's anybody knows who Monica Culpepper is.
Yeah. Jeff went out of his mind.
It was amazing.
Kyle Stone, you guys should do a recap for every season. I mean, we're doing 2 of them.
Yeah. This seems to be working out pretty well, so maybe we'll just time it up with the off seasons. I think it's fun.
I think it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Where you at, Alexa? Leave me out to dry.
I'm looking at Cornelius 1241. I remember he used to absolutely love Stephanie. If only she could have always been the lovable underdog in Palau. Yeah, there were a lot of Stephanie fans out there. My boss, who he remembers nothing about Survivor except the fact that he loved Stephanie, the pharmaceutical sales rep.
Bro, Chacho, Survivor, I think the scene of Bobby, John, and Blake taking a piss the other episode more, maybe the funniest I've left at the show. This season has to be one with the most testosterone. And why was Blake talking about his girlfriend's boobs swelling, and how funny was that scene? In terms of the most testosterone, I disagree. I could not answer the other question, though. I feel like we're going down a bad path here, so I'm just going to say. He liked his girlfriend's boobs. That's really all
and
there
they were
was to
swelling,
say.
and they were getting too big. It's a huge problem in America.
It is. I don't understand. In terms of testosterone, I disagree. I know that like a lot of these guys were bigger and buffer, but like other than Blake, none of them were so arrogant. Not so much like, yeah, Jamie and Bobby John have like their moment, but like Gary's, yeah, he's an ex-NFL player, but he doesn't come across like some macho man. Rafe doesn't. Brian doesn't. You know, I would really say it is Amazon because that whole guy's tribe is drooling, and I just think that's more.
Yeah, and that for like that first episode, like we're gonna kick their butts, we're gonna like beat them. Yeah. They're just all these hot girls, and then it's incredible. It's the story writes itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Chelsea M90. I think I liked Guatemala. If I recall, the reason I didn't like it because 1, Stephanie didn't win, even though I didn't mind Danny winning, and 2, how they dwindled a tribe right down to one person.
They didn't do that in Guatemala.
That's Palau.
That's Palau.
The other stuff is.
Giovanni Oriana with an important question. How many White Castle burgers could Judd eat? He'd devour a Crave case and could probably start making his way into the Crave crate, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Based on, although I think he would give up all of it for a beer. It's 122 degrees out here, Jeff.
Beer.
Of course, I'm giving up a hot dog for beer. That was great.
Of course, Jeff. How dare you ask me that?
Yeah, I love
it. Is Lydia one of the biggest examples of early boot fodder that went wrong? I mean, Courtney, I think, is the ultimate one because she got a vote in the final tribal council. Yeah, she could have won.
Yeah. I don't think that Lydia went wrong now. I think vote fodder that went wrong. You can make the argument for Jan in Thailand. Like that's somebody that they never expected to go as far as she did, and she makes it all the way to final 3. Like that's something they didn't expect to happen. Like Courtney, they loved.
Yeah, Courtney's awesome.
Erin, maybe. I don't know. I actually, if you rewatch Token Chains, Erin's not bad.
Yeah, she's okay. Who was I about to say? I completely lost it. I don't know. The person who I said like right before Courtney. Karen. Karen had no business getting as far as she did.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of people who've done that, and I think Lydia, I don't really have a problem with. I really don't. Yeah,
I think she's fun. She's great. I don't know why there's so much hate for her.
I don't know about great. I wouldn't call her great.
But she's she's like a good character. Like you said, she's exactly what I want like out of her character. She's not boring, and there's no reason to hate her. No. Yeah,
unless you don't like pancakes, in which case.
If you don't like pancakes, there's a lot more going on there.
Yeah, right. You need help.
You forgot to mention Judd's quote. You act like a flying rat's ass. Oh my gosh! Got to add it to the Judd jar.
There's so many for the Judd jar. The Judd jar is going to be overflowing.
No, it's filling up already. I got to get a bigger one.
We have Gamer Girl who says, I'm starting to remember why I liked or disliked certain people, like why I used to hate Brian, why I loved Lydia, why I hated Judd, and so on and so forth. Bobby John's turning out to be like Jed from Thailand, made it far. They both had good looks, but they're also both majorly boring. Jed didn't make it far in Thailand. Jed didn't hit the merge.
Yeah, he didn't make very far at all. Bobby John, he is good looking, and that's about it. And he's been entertaining by kind of making out with Jamie, but. Yeah, there's not much to him.
Yeah, Bobby John, the one thing I do like about this season is that you have very distinct personalities. They get really into Amy being from the Northeast. Brian's only ever lived in New England. Then you have Brandon and Danny are both from Kansas. You have Bobby, John, and Jamie are both from the South. You have Steph, who's from New Jersey. Like, I really like that they really play into like where these people are from. You have a really diverse group who are getting further in this game. You have a lot from the Midwest, a lot from the East Coast. I really don't think there's that many from the West Coast. I think it's mostly everything else, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. And that's a good point. Like we were just saying, Alabama and Georgia have a rivalry. We didn't know that, but that's a conversation that you don't hear very often on Survivor. So maybe if there is a rivalry, at least now I know about it because I didn't beforehand.
There you go. I mean, it's the SEC thing. I know the football teams don't like each other.
Yeah, I knew that. I know the actual states.
I didn't know the whole state was like.
The more you know, the entire state.
Yeah.
I think that might be.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot of comments.
I know. People are excited.
People are liking our rewatch. I think it's been pretty fun. I mean, we've had a good first 6 episodes. See how we're feeling in 2 weeks, but it's been really enjoyable so far.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's cool. We got the double boot. We got we got some new things to talk about. And like these are the first times they're happening. And coming up, I mean, we have an immunity idol that's coming up that still has not been mentioned. Guys, it's coming. It's happening. All right. Well, that's about it. Alexa, do your spiel. Let's go home. Yeah, I guess I'll do. I'm home. I gotta get to bed. It's almost midnight. So yeah, in the meantime, we'll be back next Tuesday. We're doing Tuesday, right, Phil? Next Tuesday. Yeah, it's going to be next Tuesday, definitely of next week. Yeah, we're going to do next Tuesday, probably around the same time next week. We'll tweet as the date gets closer. In the meantime, leave a comment on this video about what you think of the next 3 episodes. We're going to watch episodes 7, 8, and 9. We're going to hit the merge. We're going to get Immunity Idol. And it's going to be a big twist in the game. Give us a listen on iTunes. Give us a follow on Twitter at Survivor Specialists. We have a new Twitter handle. Give us a follow on YouTube. And we'll be back next week. Yep. See you then. Tuesday. June 27th. Don't forget. Don't forget.
Don't ever forget.